It would be funny if
right.
it didn't work.
Nope.
After all of our arguing.
We've been arguing for like 15 minutes right now. Welcome, friends. Hey, welcome everybody to PTSD Parent. My name is Chris.
I am Kelly.
Now you have all the introductions out of the way.
Yeah.
On PTSD Parent, we talk about some fairly heavy stuff, so just be aware that we do use a lot of humor because that's how Kelly and I survive our life. But this week will probably not be as humorous as some others. Just a lot of stuff going on, and yeah. So welcome in, and as always on the podcast, we have a disclaimer saying that if you are in crisis currently, to call a mental health professional because we are not that. Also, at the bottom of this, we have put up the suicide prevention hotline because we're going to talk about that this week. Yeah, just because there's been a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff going on this week.
Yeah,
heavy week.
Yeah. So what's on your mind?
I just want to point out, like, this week you can see I have hair and lips. And last week it was hard to see that. Not as patriotic.
Yes.
Was this or Snoopy? Also, his wife cuts my hair, and she hates it. But I like it because it's like business, fun. Business, fun. So if I do this a lot, it's because we're like in business today.
Right.
So that's all I have to say about that.
I'm so glad you cleared a lot of that up. Oh my God.
Anywho, yeah, this week has kind of sucked. There have been 2 prominent deaths by suicide this week, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, found out just this morning. Yeah. So we felt the need to talk about those things because we are the people who talk about things that other people don't. And it is an issue that's... The more embarrassing, the better.
Yes.
And I actually... Well, I think probably we've both had some struggles this week.
Yeah. And
Chris sent me a text and said, what if we talked about hopelessness and hope? And I was like, yes, because hopelessness is a reality and hope is also a reality, actually. I didn't think through the end of that sentence. But
they are both real.
They are both realities. So
now, you said you had a specific story.
Oh, yeah. I was...
crack into that?
Yeah, I was working. I work from home, and it was Tuesday morning, and we have this little fire pit out in our backyard, and we have chairs around it, and we get a lot of sun in that area. So I was sitting out there with my computer in the sun, working, and it has been just a really heavy time for me personally, like major depression for days, weeks right now. So I stare off in space a lot right now. And a friend of mine told me that she considers that self-care. And I have to agree because it's pretty soothing. So I was staring off into space. And I thought to myself, I am so tired. And then I started thinking about, I don't know how to explain it, like, I guess I started thinking about how many different pills we have. I'm going to put it that way.
Okay.
So, and then I caught myself and I thought, oh man, because right now I go to therapy once a week for a little while. And they have these papers that you have to fill out. And I have them memorized by now, but it's like, did you think of harming yourself since your last appointment? And I was like, I'm going to have to say yes to that. And then I'm going to have to say, like, did you feel hopeless this week? And I'm going to have to say yes to that.
Do you fill the papers out every time?
Yeah, every time. I don't usually go once a week. Though.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the thing is, I was like, my immediate thought after that, oh man, I have to fill this. I have to check yes on those papers because I'm a little bit perfectionist. Was that, well, I can never tell anybody that I had these thoughts.
Right.
I felt instant shame
Yeah.
and embarrassment, and that I had to keep that locked inside.
Yep.
And I was like, that stigma, that is what I talk about all the time, we can't have anymore. We
Right.
have to be able to talk about these things.
Right.
So then I was like, still uncomfortable. And I was like, well, I'll just think about that for a while.
Yes.
But then when you texted me, I was like, well, I have to tell the story.
Right.
Because
Right.
that was a clear moment of hopelessness for me. And then I think I ended up, after that, leaving the house.
Yeah.
And like going to the coffee shop or something.
Right.
Just to
Change of venue.
change of venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was actually interesting because I saw a new therapist this week for a process that we'll talk about later. But on an intake, you have all those same questions,
Mm-hmm.
and it was interesting because I've always answered honestly, but in our little kind of getting to know you portion of the session, because we had never met, she asked me, she goes, I see you've, checked yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, it's, it hasn't been for a while, but I have in the past had those feelings. And so she goes, oh, can you tell me about that real quick? I was like, not what I'm here for.
We
Don't
just
want
met.
Yeah, I don't want to chat
I
about
don't
this.
know you.
And, yeah, we're not that close. But it's interesting because when she asked me that, I realized the exact same feeling, because I don't want to tell people that, because not that it is, but the perception that I have from other people is that it is a sign of weakness and frailty.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
that we work. My wife and I do a couple things throughout the course of the year where we work on events like with kids in the foster care system. And because of that, we've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of years, like with foster care and how kids get into foster care and all that kind of stuff. And instability in the home is a principal factor in that. And so then in my head, I think, oh my gosh, I can't say yes because somebody's going to read that and somebody's going to come take my kids away. Like these are the things that happen and go through your head. And so then when she asked me, I'm like, do I truth? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
Let's discuss mandatory
right.
reporting.
Right. And you're literally doing all this in fractions of a second in your head. But that's the crazy thing, because the stigma that you talk about, and we've talked about this, and you've got a friend who does like a whole conference on stigma, which is a really cool thing. But you run that risk because to become transparent enough to get the help that we're trying to find, you have to really make yourself vulnerable and put yourself at risk. And really, quite frankly, being vulnerable and at risk is what got us to this place in the first place.
Right.
So there's nothing safe about any of this. There's nothing comfortable about any of this.
Right.
Because I have to put myself at risk of being exposed to get the help that I'm trying to get for being put at risk and being exposed.
Yes. I've never
Welcome to PTSD, guys.
I've never thought of it that way.
Right.
Wow. We're badasses.
We are. We will change the world, my friends. Okay? So don't think this is just a fly-by-night little gig. Oh my gosh. But people who have suffered trauma, like that's the thing that people who have not suffered trauma have to understand, and that's why we have all these crazy cycles in our head that run around.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other thing I was going to say, and you and I talked about this before we started live, it's frustrating to me, and I want to be careful and respectful when I say this. I think losing anybody to suicide is tragic, but it is frustrating that the conversation socially only picks up, and all of a sudden it's appropriate to have that conversation when somebody with some degree of notoriety of fame is victim to that.
Well, and I think part of it is, well, I mean, like in the case of Anthony Bourdain, it's like,
right.
Well, he's so real, and he travels the world, and he has this show, and he makes a lot
right.
of money, I assume, and
right.
and so he's got all these things in life that we term as successful.
Right.
So
which is a great recognition of the fact that none of that plays into any of this.
Right.
Like your bank account and your social status and your perceived success has nothing to do with whether you feel hope or hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's super, super important for people to get and to understand. Neither you or I served in the military, but like last year, I think it was, there was a challenge that went around on Facebook, and it was was it 22 or 27? Yeah.
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 22 a day.
22 a day.
Push-ups a day for veterans.
22, and the number 22 came from, that's the number of veterans who take their own life post-military experience from suicide, from PTSD, and from depression. And so this is not uncommon, and this is not a new thing. And actually, in the last couple of years, I heard this on something this morning, and you actually sent it to me, or no, you posted this morning on the Facebook page that the suicide rates have spiked over the last couple of years.
Over the last 2 decades. So over the last 10 years,
more than a couple of years.
It's spiked 25% in the last decade.
Right.
I read that. And then on NPR just this last week, I read that, and I want to say over the last 2 decades, it was like 56%.
Yeah.
I didn't go back and listen to it before we recorded, so I'm not entirely sure, but I know.
Check NPR for the numbers, but it's significant.
It was significant, because I remember going, what? And first I was like, oh, I'm so glad they're talking about this. Because they were talking about Kate Spade.
Right.
And then I was like, wow, that is a huge increase. And they said the part of the country is the upper middle. So North Dakota has had a huge spike over the last 2 decades.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So here's a question for you. This is kind of the topic that I was thinking about, and the difference between hope and hopelessness. Because this week for us, my family we've got like a ton of stuff going on, and like we're trying to navigate a bunch of different things.
It's the end of school.
It's the end of school. Work slow. Finances and all this kind of stuff. And so Sunday we were, going to the park for a picnic. That's what we do. That's what we've done the last few weeks, Sunday after church, and it was great. We're going to go. And then we're at a stoplight, and a gal rear ends us at 35, 40 miles an hour and totals our van. And so in the aftermath of that and everything else going on, you kind of go like, the hits seriously, like, just keep coming. Like I can't catch a break for anything right now. And so you get in that spot where it feels very hopeless. Now, I want to apologize real quick for every person I've ever said this to, because I know I've said it to a lot. I know you're terrified right now.
Yep.
I have told people, I've told my own children, I've told my wife, I've told other people going through crisis, it doesn't matter what you feel, it only matters what you know. Okay?
No, it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, I got more. So.
Hey.
No, not yet. We'll take small steps.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter what you feel, it matters what you know. And what I've learned over the last couple of years is that what you feel play so much into what you know.
Hmm.
Because how you feel and the perception colors the truth that actually exists. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I have a different experience with that.
Okay.
I have a friend of mine. Her name is Amy Ferris. She's an amazing writer. If you can follow her, I would highly suggest it. But she came out with, she does these posts that are called basically, Here Is What I Know.
Okay.
And I believe the story is she was talking to a friend of hers and she was in distress and crying and really upset and not knowing what to do. And so her friend said, "But Amy, what do you know? Tell me what you know." Yeah. And it kind of snapped her out of it.
Sure.
And so when she started just listing, because you can't think clearly and then be overwhelmed with emotion at the same time.
Right.
You can only do one of those things.
Yeah.
So it kind of snapped her out of that cycle so she could list, well, what does she know?
Right.
Right. And so she does these almost daily, these posts about here's what I know. And they're really insightful and amazing. And you kind of, once you read them after a while, you kind of start picking that up.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I feel this way. Like my body feels like I'm in a trigger right now.
Yeah.
And it feels like I'm flashing back to this other time, but what do I know? I'm in Fred Meyer. I'm safe. I'm with my husband.
Yeah.
So it's a grounding technique.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking it up so I can post it.
Ferris. Yeah. Yeah, so if you find her on Facebook, she's got a Facebook page and you can follow her. She can't take friends anymore. She's at the limit, the friend limit. Because according to Facebook, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Because Facebook says, you can only have so many friends.
Oh, weird. I wonder if we're at our limit.
No.
Oh my gosh. Probably not.
Oh my gosh.
That's kind of that was a horrible link. All right, I'll fix that later. We'll find it. We'll put it in there. Yeah. But so that's good because I think what you know is important. My point was when I said that earlier, it totally dismissed the feelings part of that.
Right.
And I don't want to do that. I do want to add the emotional element into the whole equation because I think it's important to know what you feel, but it is important to live, in what you know.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, her friend didn't start out with that.
Right.
What do you know?
Yeah. Suck it. Just shut up, whiny baby. No, that's not. We don't ever condone the term "shut up, whiny baby" with somebody in crisis.
No.
Oh, you won't. Unless you're one of my kids, and then we're working on that. No, that's don't. Oh my gosh, why am I always a bad parent?
I just hide it better.
Oh, it could be.
I know I did something bad yesterday, but I can't remember what it was.
I'm sure it's on Facebook actually. Probably.
It's nice that my children are. I don't want to get into this.
Okay, we'll skip it. We'll come back to this later. So many things. But I would be curious because I know my answer to this. But I would be curious as what do you find hope in? What gives you hope?
I actually have a helpful little way of.
Do you have an acronym?
Well, it's not really an acronym. I call it the 3 C's.
Okay.
So I can remember them. But one is compassion, connection, and comedy.
Oh.
So the
compassion.
Connection
and comedy.
Right.
Okay.
So compassion is the #1 catalyst for healing, according to mental health research. in groups that I've been involved in
Yeah.
and stuff that I've read. And the trick is, it's not just compassion for other people, it's compassion for yourself.
Oh, look at that. Self-care just came up.
Yeah, because it turns out like when people treat you like garbage,
Yes.
you start to believe that about yourself. Dude.
So weird.
You have to slowly
so weird.
change those recordings.
Yes.
And be compassionate toward yourself. So
yeah.
That is my probably biggest struggle. And then connections are the people in your life.
Right.
So
right.
I have very close friends that I can call at any time and say, this is what I'm thinking, and you will come over, or I can go over there.
Right.
And then comedy, because it comes so naturally to me. Like, if I can make something difficult into something funny, it changes my thinking about it, and I believe it changes the way that my brain works. Because I don't start spinning. I start spinning less. Let's put it that way. It's not like I never spin, but I spin less. I don't go as far down into the darkness, and I come back faster.
Yeah.
So, because it's faster, once you start thinking about things, how funny they are, it becomes a habit.
Sure. Because, well, the reality is a lot of our life has a lot of humor. So
the best comedy is anger and sadness.
Right.
That makes the best stuff.
Yeah, because that's when you do the dumbest things, usually. I mean, not the tragic ones, but yeah, just the day to day. Oh, golly. All right. So compassion, connections, and comedy. Okay. I like that.
And I also watch The Office a lot. Like when I'm in a major depression.
The U.S. version or the British version?
I've watched the British version a couple times, and I do love it.
Yeah.
But I watch the American version more often.
All right. So
it's Michael Scott. Oh, man.
Steve Carell and Ricky Gervais, huh?
Yeah.
I like Ricky. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy.
He is
fascinating. I would love to sit in a room for any amount of time with that guy.
I just want to go, who hurt you?
Yes.
Just tell me everything. I don't want to know your story, man. Because he doesn't pull any punches like he is.
No. Whew. And I've actually seen some interviews of him, like when he was growing up. And so, like, the whole story, I don't know, but he's definitely shared bits and pieces of it. And you go, oh, wow.
Oh.
Golly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to hang out, have a, beer or whatever, and just chit-chat with that guy. Oh, my gosh.
Anyway, so the 3 C's.
Yes. Okay, 3 C's. Yeah.
What about you?
So I lean a lot. I lean a lot into my faith. Like that's a big piece of it for me. But lately, I mean, and I say lately, like the last couple of years, it's really been, I think the need for connection has been huge for me, like for other people. Because like I understand, I'm in a little bit of an interesting spot because I understand that I'm an extrovert and I need contact with other people. But I'm in a place, especially with the PTSD and the process and just where I am on that journey, that I don't want to be around other people.
Interesting.
So it's a weird. So I have to force myself right now to kind of spend time with other people. I love it, but if I had the option, like, hey, do you want to go and do something, or do you want to stay home? I'll stay home.
I'll stay home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and really, it's just because I don't want to be a burden to anybody else, because I feel like I'm a burden on myself right now. And so if I'm a burden on myself, I must be a burden to other people. And so I have to get out of that mindset, you know, and if I go, it's it's always 100% the right choice, all the time. The thing that I am hesitant to do now is new people.
Oh yeah,
Like, because
that's a whole different ballgame.
it is, because I've got to be more careful, kind of more on your toes, and it's more exhausting. Like, so that new people right now tends to be more work than, I was going to say more work than they're worth, but I'm going to say that because everybody has value.
More work in my life, they're more work than they're worth. I am so awesome.
It's the hair flip again.
I know.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, but you just have to be careful, and again, the connection is so important that I need that on a couple different levels. You know, and I figured out ways to get that or to be involved and to make those connections. But I'm just you're just careful, because if I was telling the guy yesterday, it's just new people right now will ask kind of innocuous questions on their end, but then they don't realize how large that question or impact that is on my end.
Like when I went into counseling yesterday, and the receptionist was like, "Well, how are you doing?" I've been here twice in 1 week. How do you think I'm? How am I supposed to answer that, lady?
Well, if I was great, you wouldn't have the opportunity to ask.
It's like,
and so,
this little question,
this
whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like we used to have, when I used to work in technology, I used to work for this little computer store. And we would always say, somebody says, "Oh, I've got a real simple question." It's like, I'm sure you do. No. The question is super simple. The answer is here. So, yes, you do. You have a very simple question that has a very complicated answer.
Well, and the people who know you well, the people who know me well know, if I go sit in a corner for a while, okay,
just leave me alone.
It's fine. I just need a break, or I want to watch people because I love watching people, or I just want to be there. I don't want to talk right now.
Yeah.
Or, but new people will think, you're so standoffish,
Right.
So
I have a buddy who I've played music with for years and years, and he on multiple equations.
You guys do a lot of math.
We do a lot of math. We do a lot of math together.
Are you a math team?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you do the math in your head?
Shut up.
Do you have a notebook?
Oh my gosh. This actually, seriously, this actually has a point.
Oh,
and math is not it. So he's a good friend. We've played music together, and we've done road trips and been on the road together and that kind of stuff. And it was interesting because somebody was asking me, like, what does a healthy relationship for me look like? And I kept thinking to him because we have had things happen in our life, and not to be over dramatic, but they were tragic things. And him and his wife just came over and sat. Mm-hmm. Literally, they were just in the house. Mm-hmm. They didn't talk to us. They didn't require anything from us. Nothing. They were just there, and we knew and we felt their presence, and there was comfort in that. And we used to joke, because when we played music, we still play music together, but when we were doing it a lot, we should joke that part of my job in the band was, to talk to people, because he doesn't, and he fully understands that he doesn't. But then, you kind of get tapped out, and you get tired. Yeah. So, like, after we're done with the show, then after we're done with the venue, and then when we're back wherever we're staying, there's been a couple times, and I can remember even people who we played with, like newer people who are on the road with us, don't know me as well or whatever. So I can remember one situation, we were in Southern California, and everybody was inside, and they were all eating and carrying on and, doing their thing. And I was sitting outside on the patio, and which is not, the norm for me. Usually I'd be in the mix of everything. And I remember him, and he just looked out the window, and he looked, and he went, and I went, and he turned around and went on. So it's just, so those connections are so vital, because to have people who get you enough to go, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know, or you're not fine, you know, whatever level of involvement they need to do then. I mean, that's huge to have that.
Yeah. I read this, because everybody's posting about the suicides this week.
Right.
And one of my friends said something that I hadn't read anywhere else, which, you know, on social media is a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
And it's such a good point. She was like, you know, we shouldn't put the burden of asking for help on the people who are suffering all the time.
The most. Yeah.
Like it's great to share the suicide hotline and let people know that there are resources available, just, you know, in your city, in your county, nationally. But it's kind of like, if you see something, say something. Like, we need to feel that group, that social responsibility for each other.
Yeah.
Like that, where he looked at you and went,
yeah,
you know, and you could have said, and he would have been out there.
Right. Well, yeah,
or turned around and gone to the bathroom. I don't know him.
No, he would have been out there.
But, you know, like,
yeah,
why does it always have to be on the sufferer? And I was like, that is genius.
Yeah.
And she's younger than me, and so I was feeling a little bit crunchy.
Oh, sorry
like,
about that.
only a decade, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're a genius.
It's them damn kids.
Those kids are so smart. Anyway.
They're not all lazy. Some of them have things.
Yeah.
Oh
a lot. They're changing the world. But anyway, yes,
true.
The connections, for sure.
No,
but then I also read other things that were frustrating. Not so much in my circles, because I tend to not have the people who use this kind of language follow me. But, but about, you know, like people who commit suicide, they're so selfish.
Yeah.
And in my experience with mental health, there are a couple of things with that. The first is commit suicide is offensive now, which I didn't know until like last year. It's death by suicide, or some people say completed suicide.
Right. Okay, keep talking. I have a minor technical emergency.
Okay, are you going to run away?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be right back.
And then suicide being selfish. Like, I heard that my entire life. And just went right along with it until I started getting into mental health. And I was like, and in my own journey of recovery, and I was like, wait a minute, am I really being selfish? So now I don't really know what to talk about because Chris isn't here and I don't have anything to, like, you know, I don't know, man. It's just going to be dead air. What else do I want to talk about? Yeah, that was the end of my list. Oh my goodness. We're at the end of the show anyway. We're at the end of the show anyway because I finished my list. And it's all about me.
Oh, it's all about you today? Okay. I'm good. Don't worry about anybody else who might have some needs or anything. Just worry about
I'm glad I don't have to do this by myself. That was a lot of pressure.
Was it?
I'm sweating.
Why are you sweating?
Oh, I always sweat, but I was like, you left, and I was like, I'm just talking to the air. Nobody cares.
Yeah, they do. Everybody cares.
That was so weird.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay. But really, I did finish my list.
Okay.
Because I was like, maybe there's something I could... Oh, no.
So you talked about the selfishness?
I did.
Yeah. Because I wanted to say one thing about selfishness, and because, you know, we had a technical issue, you may have already said this. So stop me if it sounds familiar.
Can I slap you?
No. Only if you don't want to get hit back. No.
I can imagine how that plays out when I go home.
Yeah, I can see
what
this.
happened? Well,
we
had this slapping fight on the Facebook Live video.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
oh my gosh.
Selfishness.
Selfishness. But on the topic of selfishness, and again, you and I were talking about this before we started. It's interesting because when you talk about hope and hopelessness and all this, again, when I did my intake yesterday for this process that I'm going to go through, she asked, have you ever thought about harming yourself or harming anybody else, that kind of stuff. And I said, no, everybody else is fine, only me. So, so she starts asking some details about that, and I said, it's been a while ago, and it was interesting because between that topic and the conversation that you and I had, the conversation I had yesterday spurred the thought that with PTSD and with the things that I struggle with and with the things that I have to kind of navigate, the perception is that my wife's life, my kids' lives, my friends' experiences with me would all be much, much easier if I wasn't part of those.
Right.
Because I am the variable in that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or I guess I'm the constant in that.
And the fear that I'm doing more damage than if they were just without me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a very real thing. And so it's interesting to me because when we started talking about selfishness, the thought that I had is really, in a way, and I want to be careful. I'm not condoning hurting yourself or anybody else, but people have this perception that it's a very selfish act. It's very self-centered. Where the thought that I had was that, in a way, it's actually quite sacrificial because what's being communicated sometimes is that I want you to be in better space, and I can't be here for you to be in better space. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lack of understanding.
You can't say that on our podcast.
I don't even know if it's recording right now.
You want me to see? Maybe I can see. Oh, technical difficulties.
Technical days.
Oh, yeah. Oh. That's why it froze. Oh, man.
So that's weird.
I'll put a comment.
Well, here. So we're live here. We're still technically live because we have the other camera here. Okay. That's weird.
So we can finish our...
Well, so let's just finish the thought. Oh, my God.
Finish the thought because it turned out to be very hopeful.
Yes.
And I liked it.
Yes, it did.
It wasn't just like, you're a burden.
No, you're a burden. Have fun. Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
No, the thought is that as we were talking about this, because my perception was, that I am the thing causing the turmoil. I am the thing causing the problems. And so that's a very difficult space to be in. And that's a very hopeless space to be in. Mm-hmm. And her comment to that was, she goes, I want to make sure that we reframe that a little bit. She goes, you are not the problem. Mm. She goes, your being involved doesn't cause people anxiety or stress or make things difficult. Your trauma does. Mm. And she said, so we're not trying to eliminate you from the equation. We're trying to eliminate the trauma from the equation.
Oh, I just love that so much.
Right. And so if you get to the point where we can reframe the trauma and make the trauma not the influencer, but make you the influencer, then all of this changes, which was incredibly hopeful. And it was the first time that I think I had ever thought about everything kind of in that light. And it was really interesting. And she said, she goes, you have to understand and you have to remember that your wife and your kids want you. They don't want the trauma. They don't want the trauma as much as you don't want the trauma.
Right.
So let's work on reframing and working with the trauma and let you actually be you and let everybody enjoy that. So that
is amazing.
Yeah, so
that.
was amazing, and man, if we would have got that before the other camera would have dumped, that would have been great. But hey, we're still figuring this stuff out.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So hey, thanks for coming in today, and we appreciate it. And like I said, if you do feel yourself in a crisis, get a hold of somebody. There is a number there.
There it is.
There. So grab that and utilize if needed. All right, but thanks for coming in, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.